Welcome to LiveDaf, your online Daf Yomi Shir.
Shalom Aleichem and welcome back to today's Daf Hayomi Menachos Daf Tesvav. We begin on Yudalad Amud Beis at the Mishnah, which is 5 lines from the bottom. Back to some more scenarios where part of the carbon failed. And the question is, what happens to the rest of the carbon? For instance, says the Mishnah, Nitmeis achas menachales, echad ben asdarim. You have a pair of breads that come with the 2 sheep on Shavuos, or you have the 2 sets of lechem apanim on Shabbos, one of which became tamei. What happens to the other one? Rabbi Daimer, it's all doomed. Shneim, both breads, both sets of breads. Yeitzul beis hasreifa, meant to be taken out and burnt. Why? Shein korban tzibur chaluk. You can't split a public offering. Once one part goes, the other one goes as well. V'chachamim no. Ha-tamei, the part that became tamei b'tumas, let it stay in its tumah status, and treat it accordingly. But the rest is salvage. Vatar, eat it. Yeyachel. Amar Rabbi Elazar. Says the Gemara. You know why? According to Rabbi Yehuda, the whole carbon is doomed. Machlekes. This discussion, this opinion of Rabbi Yehuda, is lifnei zrika because it occurred before zrika, before the carbon was processed. Avalach zrika, but if the tumah, the partial tumah, arrives after zrika was successfully done, all agree the part of the carbon that's tar is salvageable. All agree the part that's tamei, fine, but the rest could be eaten. Says the Gemara, how do we understand this distinction? Meaning, ulufnei zrika b'may pligi. Okay, let's say it occurred before zrika. One bread became tamei. So why is that different? Meaning, why? In this case only does Rabbi Yehuda maintain that it dooms the whole package. The question is whether the tzitz that the Kohen Gadol wears on his forehead, can that override? Typically it overrides tumah issues regarding the carbon materials, but here it's the bread that became tumah, it's achilos, it's meant for consumption. So the question is whether that can be addressed and satisfied by the tzitz, which will enable the zrika to be considered a successful zrika despite part of the carbon being tam, because the tzitz overrides it. That is the point of machlek. Rabbanan Savri, the Rabbanan maintain, the answer is yes. Ha-tzitz meratz al achilas. Yes, the tzitz can take care of an issue of tumah that occurs on achilas, on breads, which are meant for the kohanim. Now, not to allow them to eat something which is tummy, of course, explains Rashi. Rather to enable the zrika on account of those breads to go forward successfully. And it's considered successful zrika. So the carbon has been processed successfully, and now you can eat the part that's tar at least. It's not a failed carbon. Rabbi Yehuda no. Tzitz can address, materials which are meant for the mizbeach, but not achilas, like breads. So if it occurred before the zrika, part of the carbon is out of commission. The zrika can't go ahead successfully on a partially failed carbon. According to this explanation. What about materials that are meant for the mizbeach? Like the levina that comes along with lechem apanim and those vazichen and those spoons. According to this explanation, all would agree it's okay because the tzitz certainly addresses that issue. So even if it occurs before the zrika, just proceed, right? Regarding oilin, that all agree that tzitz, yes, miratza atones for the oilin, ala oilin. Upligin, we have the same exact machlekes. Apparently it's not contingent upon these factors. The Sunday, where do we find this machlekes regarding tumah that occurred on part of the oilin? The Sunday, nitma echad ben avazichin, one of these spoons of levina come along with lechem apanim became tamei. What happens now? Rabbi Daimer, Shneim Yasu Betuma. You know what? Too late. For all we care, let the other one become tummy as well, because there's no point in saving it from, protecting it from tumah. Because once one portion of the carbon tzibur is tamei, We don't differentiate. It's like the whole carbon is tamei, so there's no point in keeping the other one tahar. Let it become tamei as well, but you can offer it because we know by carbon sibur, a tumah is done away if necessary. Tumah is pushed away. It's not a factor by a carbon sibur. But in any case, you see that even in the case of mizbeach material such as the bazichen, once part becomes tamei, it's as though the other one is tamei as well. Even, when we're talking that it occurred before Zrika. We don't say, well, let the tzitz take care of the tamei part and don't make sure to keep the other one tahar. Apparently that's not the issue here. That's not the factor at play. Rather, according to Rabbi Yehuda, it's all or nothing. It's one package. Once this is tamei, treat that one as tamei as well. No, they say no. The tamei part stays tamei and treat it accordingly. But the other one that's tahar, keep it tahar. So again, this seems to be inconsistent with the previous explanation in the machlokes. That's an issue of the tzitz taking care of it. Here, all agree. It's not achiles, it's oilen. So why would Rabbi Yehuda insist that we treat it all as one? Another question. Tashma, we have a raya from another halacha where there is part tumah, and again it's unrelated to tzitz. Rabbi Yehuda Omer afilu shevet echad tamei. So there's a carbon pesach here on Erev Pesach, and one shevet became tamei. And the rest of Klal Yisrael is tahar. What do? Yasu b'tumah. All of Klal Yisrael can do it b'tumah. There's no reason for them to do it b'tahara. Because according to Rabbi Yehuda, one shevet is called a full community, a kohol. So once the community, so to speak, is tamei, let it all go along with b'tumah. That's his opinion. So again, we don't differentiate, we don't divide the carbon sibur. And here it's unrelated to tzitz, because as we explained, tzitz only addresses carbon materials, not people. In this case, where can you even apply or discuss the concept of tzitz meratze? Apparently it's not related to that issue. Another question, Ravina brought a raya from a brayso Tashma, where Rabbi Yehuda clearly articulates his position, unrelated to any tzitz issues. Litmis achas min achales, right? That's the case in the Mishnah. Yachas min asdaran, or one of the sets of the lechem apanim. Rabbi Yehuda Omer shneim yitzbeis hasreifa. Once part is tamei, it's as though all is tamei. Why? Lefi, and he states his reason. She'ein carbon tzibur chalak. If it's a public carbon, it's all or nothing. It's one package, indivisible. Chacham disagree. Chacham Omer, no. Depends which part. Hatami v'tamasi, v'atar yachil, right? The tummy stays tummy, the other one's tar. V'misa, according to you, Rabbi Yehuda should have articulated his position differently. Lefi she'ein hatzitz meratze al achiles. He should have said the problem is because the tzitz can't take care of achiles. He doesn't go there. He speaks about the carbon tzibur being indivisible. Ella, rather, Rabbi Yechanan, I'll tell you the reason for Rabbi Yehuda. Talmud. This is a lesson, aruchu, which is been handed down. He received it from his teachers, from his rabbeim. A clear formula, b'pivshal Rabbi Yehuda's mouth, so to speak. This is his position, very clear. She'ein karban tzibur chalak. Period. Whenever an issue arises regarding a carbon tzibur, even if only part of it is affected, whether it's tumah, whether it's tumah on the breads, tumah on the bazichen, whether it's one of the shvatim becoming tamei, etc. It spreads into the whole thing as one package. Continues the Heilige Mishnah. Back to the topic of pickle. So you have the carbon toida, which comes along with 4 sets of breads. If pickle occurs on the toida, on the animal itself, it carries over, it spills over to the breads, as we're going to see later in the Mishnah. So basically, a pickle thought that was present while processing the animal can affect the breads. Because, as the Gemara will explain, the breads are secondary. with the animal, as opposed to the animal which is not secondary to the breads. Right? The behemoth is like the ikar, and the lechem is like the tafer, like we have in Hilchas Brachas. So it's a one-way effect. Hatoida, yeah, mefagelas as a lechem, but not in the reverse. Valechem einu mefagelas hatoida. Ketzad, for example, shachadas hatoida lechem men alamachar. He did the shchita on the toida, having in mind to eat part of the toida itself. When we say the toida, it means the animal. Part of it tomorrow. Hiva lechem mefugalim. So the pigul status applies to the animal and to the breads. However, lechem and alechem lamachar, suppose he only intended on eating the bread tomorrow. In this case, only the bread becomes pigul, not the animal itself. Halechem mefugel v'ta'idenu fugelas. Another example is the sheep and the breads on the shvois. Sheep are the primary, the breads are secondary. Hakvasim amar faglin is halecha, but not the other way around. V'alechem nim faglas hakvasim. Keita, for example, hasheichel is hakvasim. We did shchita on the sheep lechel mehen lamachar, to have some of the sheep tomorrow. So the pigul lands on the sheep and carries over to the breads as well. Heim v'alechem mefugalim, but lechel is halechem lamachar. You had in mind to eat the breads, only the breads tomorrow. Yeah, halechem mefugel. The lechem are now tagged with a pigul label, but not the sheep. Akvasim einon fugalim. My timer, says the Gemara. Why does it work this way? Why is the toida going to affect the breads and not vice versa? Is it based on Rav Kahana? The Rav Kahana menayin lachmei toida. Shnikru toida. Where do we find that the breads of the toida are labeled as toida as well? So when he says I'm going to eat the toida tomorrow, it covers the breads. They're also labeled as toida. Shnemar the pasuk in its wording indicates vikriv al zevach hatoida. What is the zevach hatoida? Chalos. So chalas are labeled with the label of toida. Says the Gemara yach chanami. So it should go both two ways. If you mafagel the lechem, the toida should also become pigul, because as we explained, lechem is also given the title toida. So as the Gemara halei kasha, that could be simply answered as follows: lechem ikri toida. We just showed that the breads are also called toida, but the toida lo ikri lechem. The toida is not called lechem. So yeah, the lechem are affected by the toida, but not in the reverse. What about the next case in the Mishnah with the sheep and the breads? Elahadik tani. What about the next halach in the Mishnah? Kvasim amar faglan is halechem, but not the lechem being mefagel the kvasim. Halechem einu mefagel kvasim. What do we find in this case? That lechem is called kvasim, to consider them sort of a subset of the kvasim. Lechem, regarding the breads, in this case, heicha ashchan dikri kvasim, where do we find them to be called kvasim? Says more Ella, rather, let's take a more simple approach. It's about primary and secondary. And that applies to both examples. El time. Let me give you the reason why the breads are always dependent on the animals, not in the reverse. Because lechem galal toida, the lechem comes on account of the toida. Rashi explains, toida ikar v'lechem tafel. Furthermore, says Rashi, how did the lechem even become kaddish? Through the shchita of the toida. So clearly, the main is the toida, the secondary is the lechem. So the status of the toida spills over to the lechem, but not in the reverse. Ve'in toida glal lechem. Likewise by these sheep, lechem are glal the kvasim. Ve'in kvasim glal the lechem. But shrichi, so if it's based on the same clear principle, why do we have to discuss two cases in the Mishnah? Shrichi, both are needed. We only discussed the case of the toida and the bread. Hasma would say over there, over there, if I'm going to make the bread pigul, the toida doesn't become affected, because the breads and the toida are not going to be waved together in tnufa, so they're not one and the same package, not one and the same entity. I understand why the lechem will not affect the toida. Aval kvasim, but by the two sheep and breads, where they undergo a joint tnufa experience. You wave them together, perhaps that binds them together, and now they're interdependent and can affect each other both ways. Ema can say, when I make pigul on the lechem, the kvasim are affected as well. Tzricha. Comes the Mishnah says in both cases, breads are always secondary, they're recipients and not providers. I have a question, says Rabbi Lezer to Rav. So I understand that the pigul on the breads do not affect the toida. Fine. But what about if the machshava of pigul, which is meant to be at least a kazayis, is comprised half and half? He's thinking during the shechita of the taida to eat a kazayis, which is comprised half of the taida itself, of the meat, and half of the bread. What happens to the breads now? He's doing the shechita of the taida, thinking he's going to have a kazayis, part of the bread, part of the taida. When I say taida, I mean the meat of the animal. Tomorrow, what's the status now? Now, what do you mean? There's no question that the taida itself is not affected, because bread cannot affect the taida, period. Because even in a case where when it's a full kazayis of bread, not a combined, comprised half kazayis, a full kazayis of bread, we just explained, we just concluded, it will not affect the taida. Loi mefagla. Certainly when you're cutting bits and pieces together, which is a weaker pigul endeavor, when the kazayis is comprised of some of the meat and some of the bread, certainly the Miboilov goes without saying that the taida is unaffected. The question is regarding the breads. My question is, will this pigul thought affect the breads? What's the question? Can we combine? Can we mitzaref some of the meat to the half a zayis of bread to mifagel the bread? Or perhaps not, because it's not a complete machshava on one or the other. Amalei says the answer is yes. Even in this case where it's a comprised, combined machshava, alecha mafugel, v'aytoiden mafugel. Yeah, the taida is speared, but the lechem becomes pigel. Ask the Gemara about but why? Listen to this interesting analogy, interesting kal v'chomer, interesting piece of logic. Perhaps the breads should be spared as well. Lema, we can apply a kal v'chomer. Umaha mafagel. Look, again, this fellow is thinking about a kazayis, half of the taida, half of the lechem. Now, the taida part of that kazayis, which is called hamafagel, he's trying to generate pigul on the breads. Ein misfagel. He himself is unaffected by this experience. The taida itself is spared of pigul, as we just explained. That's clear. So he was generating, but remained unaffected. Ha'bola fagel pigul. Certainly, the bread side of this kazayis, the half a zayis of bread that he's thinking of, which is coming and trying and attempting and endeavoring to be mefagel the taida, and it was unsuccessful in its attempts, right? Certainly, if it's a failed attempt, it should be a non-starter. Even regarding itself, it shouldn't become pigul. The bread itself should be spared of pigul as well. Ein adin, of course, wouldn't you agree, shalei spagel? The bread itself should be unaffected by this pigul attempt. Again, the taida, who actually assisted in the pigul process, in making the bread pigul, it in itself was spared. Certainly the breads which tried to make the animal pigul and was unsuccessful, certainly it in itself shouldn't be pigul. It's a failed enterprise. Says the Gemara, really? Since when do we say such a interesting kal v'chomer? Is this really logically sound? Actually, we'll bring a raya. That's not so simple. Okay, so we have this lucky neighbor. He has this vineyard budding away, right? Smadar, and his neighbor comes and plants him up with weed or whatever. No. So the halacha was presented to the chacham. What's the status? Is this kalayim? Does this mishmash prohibit the vines and the plants? And they said, look, halfway. V'asur sazra, and the plants that were added became asur. V'tiras hagfanim, but the gefanim, the vines remained free of any isur. And the reason is because Taisus explains, because there's a halacha. You cannot land an isur on something which belongs to somebody else. You have no access to the other person's vineyard, no business planting him up. So the vines remain mutter, but the plants are asur. That's the halach. Question is, according to the above mentioned piece of logic, it shouldn't be this way. Because the vines, which are considered the Isrim, they're the generators of the Isser. Torah says don't add vegetables to a vine. A vine is what makes the Isser. So he's basically generating Isser on the plants and the vegetables. Nevertheless, he himself remains safe. Certainly the vegetables that are trying to prohibit the vines and are unsuccessful in that mission, certainly they themselves should be mutter, based on the previously mentioned piece of logic. We should apply kal v'chomer. Look, the vines which are the Isrim, generators of the Isser and Nesser, do not become Asr themselves. Certainly the vegetables which are attempting to prohibit the vines and are unsuccessful at that, certainly they themselves should not become Asr, because it's a failed attempt, a failed mission. And it didn't, of course, they themselves should not become Asr. So as the Gemara, no, you can't compare the two stories. In the case of Kalayim, the truth is, kanbus, only very specific plants may one not plant in a vineyard v'nat Torah. Only kanbus, veloch, specific type of deep-reaching, rooted plants, Asr Torah prohibits in a vineyard. Shars run regarding other plants, vegetables, grains, it's only with the Rabbanon the Asri. The Rabbanon, they're also Asr if they're planted in a vine, the Asiri. So once it's only the Rabbanon, you can understand that the Rabbanon only penalized the one that the troublemaker. Hai David Surah, the neighbor who made the Isser happen, who planted the stuff, Rabbanon penalized him and prohibited his produce. Hi, the David Surah, but the vineyard owner, who was not involved in the Isra, like Rabbanon, but not apply a penalty. So there's a very specific reason in this case why this is Asr and this is not. But in our case of the Pigel, based on a kal v'chomer, we should spare the breads of Pigel as well. So this was the first version of the discussion. Reb Lezer had a question from Rav. He did the shchita on the keves, on the kvasim, on condition that he's going to have a kazayis tomorrow. Kazayis of what? Half bus or half lechem. The question was whether the lechem become pigel, and the answer was yes. Vika the masla kvasim. Some had a different version of this conversation regarding instead of talking about actually it was regarding the toida, right? The toida and the breads. So instead of toida and breads, it was a similar back and forth, almost identical, but instead of toida and the breads, it was regarding the sheep and the breads and shvois. We'll see in a minute, what the difference is. Some applied this conversation regarding the sheep. So Reb Lezer asked the question, Rav, Ashechet es hakvasim, he did the shchita on the sheep, lechel kazayis melach melamacher. Lechel kazayis mehen u'melach melamacher, to have a kazayis comprised of the basar of the kvasim and half kazayis of the breads tomorrow. Now, what's the halacha here? Lefgulei kvasim lekim boy. There's no question that the kvasim are spared. Hashta kulei melechem lemefagli. Because certainly in a case where the kazayis was filled completely with just one type of material, like the breads, loy mefagli, the kvasim remain unaffected, like we explained in the Mishnah, because they're the primary and unaffected by the secondary. Mehenem lachman and boiling. Of course, in a case where it's not even a full kazayis of one material, it's a mishmash, of course the kvasim remain spared. My question is regarding the status of the breads. Shall we say it works or not? Can we combine some of the kvasim with the lechem to make the lechem pigel or not? Amalei, he says, in this case as well, lechem afugel, v'kvasim in fugel, and the breads are pigel but not the sheep. And then we go on to the whole conversation, almost word for word. We should apply a kal v'chomer to spare the breads. If the sheep, which are the mefaglim, they themselves remain spared. Certainly the breads which are trying to invalidate the sheep as well and are unsuccessful at that, and additionally they themselves certainly should be spared. Since when do we apply this type of logic? By the time we have a story, with the story of the Kalayim, where the plants are asr but not the vineyards. We should apply the kal v'chomer here as well. If the vines which are trying to generate isser are not going to be affected, certainly the plants which are trying to invalidate the vineyards and are unsuccessful at that, in addition, certainly the Vegetables should not become affected. To compare, there is a special arrangement with the Rabbanon, Hasam Kambas Ufos Torah, only the special plants are also in a vineyard, Sharzram Daban Nasir, other plants are only also in Rabbanon. And they picked and chose. Haida of the Isur considered Rabbanon, only the one who did the Isur, the planter, did the Isur and he got penalized, but not the vineyard owner. Levet Isur, the Rabbanon, but in the case of the people, we should apply Kavachim. Okay, so pretty much word for word. Now, any differences between these two versions? Yeah. Mandi masla toida. According to the first version, that was applied to a toida, and the answer was that certainly the lechem become pigel, koshke akvasim, certainly in the case of the sheep and the breads, that the breads will become pigel. Because as we explained earlier, the breads have a special relationship with the sheep, because they're joined together, bound together in the tnufa experience. So certainly there's a more of a correlation between the two. Aval, uman the masna kvasim, but according to the second version that the halacha was stated regarding the kvasim, I can understand that there's a difference. Kvasim hu duhuskiku zel zel tnufa. Regarding the sheep and the breads, since they have this joint experience in the tnufa, so I can understand that, even in this case, when the kazayis is comprised a little of this, a little of that, there's a correlation as considered one pigel experience. Aval toida, the lehuskika zelzav tnufa, but by the toida and the breads, where they're totally unrelated in a sense, there's no tnufa jointly. So perhaps that's different. You can't generate pigel by thinking of a kazayis, which is partly bread and partly meat. It's only by the kvasim and the breads where they have this joint experience. So I can more readily understand that you can join them together in this one kazayis, half and half, but not by the toida. Okay, so we had a question regarding a kazayis of pigel. Half basar, half lechem. What happens? Lechem becomes mefugel. Question was it on the toida breads or on the kvasim breads? Here comes the third version of this conversation. Rabbi Abazuti, that was his name, boy lahachi. He had a third version of this question of Rabbi Lezer from Rav. Boy menay Lezer Rav hashechad es hakeves. So unrelated to this, kazayis combination. It's a new story. Hashechad es hakeves. Lechel kazayis mechaver lemachar. So he has the two sheep and the two breads. Hidoshchita on keves number one, and he declares that I'm going to have a kazayis of chaverei. That was the lashon he used. Lemachar, I'm going to have it tomorrow. No, what happens here? The word chaver can mean the other element of this offering, which are the breads. Chaver could also mean its pair, the other animal, with a big difference in effect. Chaver, the term chaver keves mashma, could be referring to his colleague, the pair, the other sheep. But mefagel and pigel is a non-starter in this case, because as we'll learn in the Mishnah later, if while doing the shchita on one keves he's thinking about the other one, it's a non-starter. Perhaps chaver means the bread. So in this case the bread becomes pigel, as we had in the Mishnah before, right? If you do a machshav of pigel during the shchita of the keves on the bread becomes pigel. He says we have a brayso. It's a Mishnah actually, which will solve this semantics riddle. Mishnah says if you did shchita on one of the sheep to eat some of it lemachar tomorrow, who pigel l'chaver kasha? This sheep is pigel, but not the other one. Lechem l'chaver lemachar. You had a mind to eat from chaver tomorrow. Shneim ksher, and both sheep are kosher. Apparently, the word chaver means the other sheep, because if it's the right, that's what the Mishnah is saying. Otherwise, if the intention is the breads, it would say the bread is pigel. It doesn't say that. Apparently, we're not speaking about the breads. Alma, apparently the word chaver means keves mashma. Its counterpart, the other sheep. Says the Gemara, okay, but maybe it so happens that in that case he added a word. Although it's not stated in the Mishnah, but perhaps it so happens that he added a word and he specified, Dilma the Parsh, he expressed himself. Omar, he says chaver keves, the other sheep. That's how we know. But otherwise, simply using the word chaver perhaps is inconclusive. Continues the Heilige Mishnah. So just as the Carbon could be mafagel the breads, which are secondary to the carbon. It also has the same effect on the nesachim. Once the nesachim, the wine, etc., that comes with the carbon, became sanctified in a klisharis. Now it's labeled as carbon material. It's sort of attached to this carbon. So it is susceptible to the pigul status. Divrei Meir, Rashi explains because the Gemara explains because the carbon is a matir on the nesachim. It permits it for further processing. So since the nesachim are recipients of the carbon, they can obtain the pigul status by way of the carbon. That's Rav Meir's opinion. Rav Meir. Chacham disagree. We'll see later. Chacham say, the nesachim are a separate offering, even though they're accompanying the carbon, but they're a separate, independent entity, so they're unaffected by the carbon. But even Rav Meir agrees that a nesachim ein faglas hazevach. The nesachim are secondary to the carbon, so they can't turn around and affect the carbon. Keta, for example, very similar to the previous mission. Hashevlas hazevach, he did shchita on the carbon. Lechel meno lemachat, eat part of the carbon tomorrow. Hu nesachim afugalim, the carbon's pigul, and so is the nesachim. Lakim nesachim lemachat. He had in mind to offer the nesachim tomorrow. That only affects the nesachim, but not the carbon itself, which is primary. Hanasachim afugalim, vazevach ein mafugol. Says the Gemara. Tana Rabbanan, nischei behema chayav l'mishim pigul. Pigul can theoretically apply to nesachim. Why? Because they are recipients of the carbon. Because the offering of the blood of the carbon, the zrika, now sets up the nesachim for further akrava, gives them the green light. So they are davar sheyesh matirin, and they get affected by pigul. The Rebbe Amalei disagreed. They told Rameh, only Rameh Vadloi will even prove to you that they're separate entities. Adam, maybe zivchayim, a person could choose to bring his carbon today and delay his nesachim 10 days later. Apparently, it's a separate offering and not tied to the status of the carbon. Amar Lance, he says, in a way, you're right. I'm talking about a case where he's bringing it together. When they come together, so now they're bound together and affected by the carbon. Amar Loi, so the Rabbanan responded. Well, even in this case, you can still switch it to a different carbon. Apparently, it's not, even though it's earmarked for this carbon, but it's not bound. Apparently, Rav Meir holds you can't do that. Once the shchita takes place, the nesachim are now bound to this specific carbon, non-transferable, just like the lachmi toida. That are non-transferable. You can't switch them out after the shchita of the carbon. So once they're labeled as part of this carbon, they're part of the package, they get affected by the status of the carbon. Another example of this discussion is the lug shemen shel metzora, the lug of oil that the metzora brings, which accompanies his karbanis. Is it susceptible to pigul? Is it part of the package, or is it a separate item? Same machlokes. Tana Rabbanan, lug shemen shel metzora, chayav l'mishum pigul. Pigul can apply to this as well. Mishum v'pnei shedam asham matir lebahinos, because when they sprinkle the dam of the asham, it now permits placement of the oil on the thumbs of the mitzvah, which means to say that the blood, in effect, is a matir on the oil. So now pigul can apply to something which has matir. That is Rav Meir's shita. The Rav Meir Amalei. The Rav Meir Chacham responded once again, no. You can bring your asham today, and your log in 10 days' time. That highlights its independence. He responded, I was only speaking about a case where you happen to bring it together. They responded, but even then, you can still switch it out to a different carbon, to a different, So it's not bound to the status of this specific carbon. So once again, Rabbi responds. Apparently, Rabbi disagrees on this point, because Rabbi holds that they become entrenched, so to speak, and bound to this carbon during the shechita, just like the bread of the taida. Once they're there, they become part of it, and they cannot be switched out. So they become enshrined, right, into this package, and therefore it will share the fate of the carbon. It will become affected by the pigul thoughts that occur during the processing of the carbon. Okay, let's do a quick chazara. We had one Mishnah, then another, then another. So the first Mishnah spoke about a mishap occurring on part of a korban tzibur, you have a chiddush of Rabbi Yehuda, ein korban tzibur chalak. It's all or nothing. Next Mishnah spoke about two examples of primary and secondary elements, like the toida with its breads and the kvasim with their breads. The effect is only one way, from the animal to the breads, and not vice versa. We had an interesting discussion regarding a machshava pigel, which entailed a kazai is comprised of part bread and part basar. What happens there? We had a discussion between Rameh and the Chachamim regarding the status of nasachim of a korban, regarding the lukshem shel mitzayra. According to Rameh, they are susceptible to pigel because they're part and parcel of this package. According to Rabbanan, they're independent entities and immune from any pigel status. All the best to you, and Hatzlacha.